You know what's particularly weak about this video that they put out, and say it concludes with something along the lines of these guys need to protect the field? No, Jake Spangolf. The field needs to be protected from these arbitrary and whimsical application of rules that are costing guys. This could cost them millions of dollars.
And when you deny somebody an opportunity to get a promotion to the PGA Tour based on some bullshit like this, you need to have your ass checked.
Folks, you've probably seen the shocking video where apparently Shad Tuten moves his ball in a lift, clean, drop, and replace preferred lie situation, and now got a 2-stroke penalty with a few holes left to go in the Korn Ferry Tour Championship Finals, and that dropped him down 2 spots to go from the 30th, the last spot, to get a PGA Tour little badge card for next year to, hey, here's another year of the Korn Ferry Tour with the tiny purses. I've got with me the man who can express outrage more than anyone I know, Jake Spangolf.
I'm pretty frustrated for Shad. I mean, this is one of those moments where right now the Korn Ferry is doing everything right now to promote and get video on Rafael Campos, who, by the way, to finish that high on the Korn Ferry Tour, regardless if you make it or not, you played a great year. You played a great season. That's a tough grind on the Korn Ferry Tour. So Rafael Campos, they immediately throw a camera in his face.
God, I just want to say, I just want to thank my sponsors, my family, my wife, my friends that came out this week, my team. God, it's tough.
When they tell him, hey, by the way, you're making the big tour next year, and you just see him like upset, panicked, confused, and he has to go like lay down in the back of his Jeep because he's like, this shouldn't be happening, because he already knew he didn't make it. And then they're told afterwards, hey, by the way, you did make it. We decided to penalize Shad.
Obviously, it's hard to be, 30th. I feel bad for 31st.
And so I feel for Shad so much, and I don't like how the Korn Ferry Tour is just propping up Rafael Campos right now. They're putting that video out there of him in the back of his Jeep, and it's just like, this is not the real issue here. The real issue here is that you introduced the opportunity for this kind of bullcrap to happen. First off, when you introduce lift, clean, in place, you are already introducing an extra localized rule, an extra component to ruling of golf. So it's no longer the true blue, hey, play it as it lies golf, right? And so when you introduce lift, clean, in place, now you've created this opportunity for Baska Shishka to happen. And for you to then enforce a rule like this, when we know you don't enforce things like pace of play, like, what are we doing here?
Well, it's ridiculous, as you point out, but there's multiple issues with how this whole situation came about. Yes, yeah. You're right. There's this huge kind of cover up now. We're like, let's focus on the joy and not the questionable ruling that has taken Shad Tuten's card away from him. Now, if you watch the video, you have the rules official guy come out and say, well, he clearly moved the ball to the right. He was supposed to put it in the same spot again, and then if it rolled, then you can replace it. He's also saying from this video that you could see the ball clearly roll forward.
There was a video of him trying to place his ball under the lift, clean, in place local rule. And I think it's pretty clear in the video that when he placed it one time, that the ball rolled forward a little bit. Unfortunately, that rule requires you to try to replace it on the exact same spot again. And then if it won't stay at rest, that's when you find the nearest place that you do, just like any other rule that requires, placing. So when he did not try to place that ball right back on the same spot, that's when he was, under penalty, 2 shots.
I've reviewed the video many times. You can see I've marked it with this little letter right here. It's staying in there. There's a little bit of oscillation maybe, but there's no way you can definitively say that ball has moved forward or it's not being replaced in the same spot.
But more importantly, with oscillation, with lift, clean, in place, it's very difficult to fully get it back in the exact same position itself. And in all honesty, lift, clean, in place is in a lot of ways a preferred lie situation. where you're allowed to improve your lie in a lot of those situations. That's what Live Clean in Place is about, pretty much. I know it's supposed to put it in the exact same spot, but sometimes you even call it, they even have it the upgraded version, which is preferred lies. Now, it wasn't that, but at the same time, it's just irritating to me that again, when you're introducing the opportunity to improve your ball from its initial standing in the first place, we're already creating a scenario in which players are allowed to improve their lie. So why are we getting in his face about improving his lie? He didn't throw it on the green. He didn't take it and use the foot wedge and put it in the hole. Why are we penalizing this young man and ruining his future to do this to him?
Well, you also have, he's getting increased focus, and this could be ruled against him because the camera is on him. And they already put out the rule, like, you can't have people call in, from home for these camera shots because you're under increased scrutiny.
What we're trying to do is eliminate players on television being held to a higher standard than the rest of those that are playing the game, simply because they're on television and now we have access to this video that can zoom in, slow motion, replay, all those things.
And because more people have eyeballs on you, then they can say, hey, that moved half an inch, that moved a quarter inch, that is an exact same spot. So they try to get rid of that whole scenario, except for there are 2 instances, I guess, where you can call in from the camera.
Well, even more weird than that is why are we still? I mean, I know we had that situation with the LPGA where we had a player who had visibly hardcore improved their ball mark, like they had marked it on the green and like put their ball mark back down like 3 or 4 balls differently. We had that scenario, and that's a little different. But you're right; they're doing their best as far as the tour goes to not showcase players touching their ball on camera, unless of course it's in a major situation. We've seen it on the Live Golf Tour. We've seen, hey, Peter Uihlein is in the middle of a rules situation, so he's out in the woods trying to find his ball for 30 minutes. We've seen that happen before. We've seen, I've seen Will Zalatoris, have to take like 17 drops because of how the ball is not staying within the drop zone, and so they do that sometimes.
Let me break it down for you as per this golf.com article. The ruling involved Live Clean in Place, a local rule that was in effect for the round. On the par 5 15th, Tuten hit his second shot from thick left rough to a spot about 100 yards short of the green. He marked his ball with a tee. He cleaned his ball. He placed it. It apparently moved. Here's where the infraction started. I didn't necessarily see the ball move. So first of all, I'm not going to just assume that this is correct because even the article says it apparently moved. You can see the video. I don't see it apparently moving. Let's continue. Tuten moved his ball slightly to the right. That was wrong. He needed to try again. I don't even see him moving his ball slightly to the right. I see him, the ball's still in hand. He hasn't let it go. He might have touched the ground to the right, but if you can see from the video with the original ball position mark, he's putting it basically back to the same spot. So how can you have this kind of basically death penalty of sorts for what we can't even clearly see from the video we have?
Well, not only that, it's clearly not an intentional improvement of the situation. This is minute of minute of minute. This would be, this is not a putting situation where, hey, I'm putting it two ball lengths to the right in order to avoid, a spot that I see it has an upturned grain on there, right? It's not one of those scenarios. And, this is still 100 yards out in the middle of the fairway, pretty much. And I don't understand why they got so in his face about this for literally a fraction of an inch. And some people out there will say, well, he should have called it on himself. I don't think, A, he was fully aware that he did this. B, I don't think he gave a shit. I think he was focused solely on trying to get a par on this hole to keep himself in the hunt. The only thing in his mind at this point was tour card, tour card, tour card, tour card.
Well, Jake Span Golf, we actually have the footage, so everyone can now look at it, make their own determination. Do you at home agree with this? Tuten moved his ball slightly to the right. I don't see him moving his ball slightly to the right. I see him maybe initially making contact with the ground slightly to the right, but you can see when he finally places it, he puts it in pretty much the same exact position it originally was in the beginning, as marked on the video here. That was wrong, this article says. He needed to try again. According to Rule 14.2e, which covers what to do when a placed ball does not stay on its original spot. The player must try a second time. That's assuming it wasn't on the original spot. To me, when I look at the video, it looks like it's on the original spot.
Well, and what's the margin of error on this? Do we have to have it on the exact grain of the exact grain? I mean,
thank you. That's why I bring you out here, because you make sense, sir.
Thank you. I mean, look, that's the way I see it. I mean, he's within the margin of error. We're not talking about 5 inches, 6 inches. It's within such a small difference of dimension that, to me, it's just infinitesimal to even complain about this. You know what I'm saying? It's just, what is the margin of error with this? Do we have a definitive rule?
No, it's all a gray area. This article also brings up the televised and untelevised issue. There are some questions here, the article continues. Aren't most Korn Ferry Tour events untelevised? Yes, they are. Would this potentially have gone unnoticed most weeks? Yes. It appeared, as you pointed out, that Tuten believed he was acting according to the rules, because even from when analyzing the videos ourselves, we can't see this huge misplacement of the ball. It, to me as well, the standard isn't putting on the exact grain of dirt or the exact blade of grass. I mean, there's some wiggle room there, obviously, because it's scientifically impossible to put it in the exact same spot. Everyone's violating the rule at that point.
Yeah, and more importantly, the article that you're quoting, they're saying he should have tried again. Whose job is it to call it on him? I mean, let's be real. It's the Korn Ferry event. You and I both know, I mean, if you've been to a Korn Ferry event, the majority of the time that you're playing in a Korn Ferry event, there are 3 wags, wives and girlfriends, and maybe 2 children following each group.
You literally just taught me right now what wags meant. I had no idea what that meant. I just thought it was like significant other or something.
That's what it means. It means wives and girlfriends.
Thank you. Now I know. Let's continue. But wasn't there a rule change limiting video rules? Yes, there are 2 exceptions. So typically you don't go to the video, right? But we have 2 exceptions. Now, assuming that Shad Tuten had actually done misdeeds with the ball, when can you actually go to the video? Because typically you can't go to the video. According to a USGA release, the first standard states the use of video technology can make it possible to identify things that could not be seen with the naked eye.
Those standards are what we call a naked eye standard. So if a player could not have seen or otherwise been aware that they've breached a rule, and the only reason we see it is through television evidence, the player's not going to be held to penalty.
The second standard in which we can use the video applies when a player determines a spot, point, position, line, area, distance, or other location in applying the rules, and recognizes that a player should not be held to the degree of precision that can sometimes be provided by video technology.
The second standard is what we call reasonable judgment standard. And as golfers, you're often required to make determinations or decisions on where you're going to play from next, whether you're replacing your ball, where you cross the margin of a water hazard. And in all those instances, you're using judgment. So what this standard is telling us is that if you did all that was reasonable in that given circumstance, and you got it wrong, and you're just fractionally wrong, and the only reason we know you got it wrong is because we have television evidence, then you're also not going to be held to penalty.
So, as we pointed out before, there is wiggle room because you're not held to that same standard of a blade of grass or the same exact piece of dirt that the ball was on, because it says the player should not be held to the degree of precision that can be sometimes be provided by video technology. It's saying that right there. But how does a second standard apply when a player determines a spot, point, position, line, area, distance? So I guess here it would be the spot. And it would seem to me that the video can be used if the spot is clearly wrong, right?
That's what it sounds like, because essentially they're saying that the video is only usable in that scenario if it's determining an outright infraction. Something like the LPGA incident where we had the girl that moved her ball like ridiculously far away from her mark. And that's not the same scenario.
So here, you could say that the second standard applies to determine a spot, But when we're watching the videos ourselves, we can't see that spot is wrong. So
Yeah.
if anything, the second aspect of this rule where you can use the video kind of shows why it shouldn't be used in this case, because why should a player be held to this degree of precision that can sometimes be provided by video technology? When we're looking at this video, we can't even see that he egregiously was in the wrong spot. Jake Span Golf, the issue with these USGA rules is they can easily be weaponized because there's so much gray area in them. It's so much up into interpretation.
You're right. They're written in such a way to where they're basically like any political standard nowadays, to where they can be translated as one way or interpreted as another way. Hey, we want to use this for you. Or hey, you totally violated it. And it's purely based on the eyes of the interpreter. Yeah, and not only that, unless you're going to have a rules official in every single group and have somebody, give the thumbs up for every single one of these shots, which is that what they need to do now? Is, hey, just have somebody do this. So that way it's no longer on the player, it's on the rules official. And then we can blame the rules official, kind of like we did at the U.S. Open with Rory McIlroy.
I honestly think that Shad Tuten can beat this rap, this false case. He's caught a case that they've assumed all these things, A, B, C, D, E, and then they said, okay, you can use the cameras for G and F, and and all these assumptions. But he can challenge on every point, and if he can just get one of these points negated, I think he gets a reason to get his card. I think the actual rules to use the televised footage are actually also furthering his case that he did nothing wrong. They shouldn't have used this case because the standard, as you point out, is you're not on the same piece of dirt and grass. We're not using an XY axis coordinate. We're not using drones to locate exactly where that ball should have been. It was close enough. What should we do moving forward for Shad Tuten?
For Shad Tuten, if I'm him, I'm getting a lawyer right now. I mean, seriously, the PGA Tour Nexus needs to get their butt in gear and make it right for him. They need to go ahead and offer him full membership next year because that's what he deserves.
Folks at home, what do you think? I think we got to get a movement together, calling it Rootin' for Tuten, and get this guy his well-earned card. Folks, subscribe, share, and like.